Something huge is happening with the US economy. And no, this isn't some far-off prediction. It is happening right now as we speak. We are caught in what you can only call a perfect storm, a moment where political power plays, deep economic uncertainty, and a historic flight to safety are all colliding at once. So let's get right into it and break this down. First things first, just look at gold. It hasn't just been climbing. It has absolutely shattered all-time records, blowing right past that huge psychological barrier of $5,000 an ounce. This isn't your normal rally. This is a massive signal that something fundamental is shifting under our feet. And a huge part of that shift is being driven by this just unbelievable political pressure. For the first time in history, the Department of Justice has launched a criminal investigation into a sitting Federal Reserve chair. This is an institution that for decades has been seen as completely independent, totally untouchable. Not anymore, apparently. So where is all this headed? Well, the big banks are already placing their bets. J.P.Morgan just dropped this jaw-dropping new forecast, and they're predicting gold could hit $6,300 an ounce by the end of this year. Let me be clear, that's not just bullish, that's a massive warning shot to the markets. And that really brings us to the core question we have to answer today. Why? Why is all of this kicking off right now? What on earth is driving this chaos? And more importantly, what does it mean for your money? Well, the thing is, this isn't just one single crisis. What we're actually seeing are three incredibly powerful forces all converging at the exact same moment. Think of it as a political hurricane, a thick economic fog, and a giant market wave, all crashing together. So let's try to make sense of the chaos piece by piece. All right, let's start with that first element of the storm, the political hurricane. This is a power struggle of historic proportions between the White House and the Federal Reserve. This central bank of the United States. And this thing escalated with, just breathtaking speed. On January 10th, boom, the DOJ hits the Fed with subpoenas. The very next day, a defiant Chair Powell releases a video statement pushing back hard. By January 12th, the markets are in a full-blown panic, and gold shoots up to a new record. And then, just 2 weeks later, Trump names his pick to replace Powell. It all happened in a flash. And here's Fed Chair Powell in his own words. He didn't just deny anything. He basically called the whole investigation a pretext and then directly linked the threat of criminal charges to the administration wanting to control interest rates. Wow. This is an incredible public statement, and it's a direct challenge to the Fed's long-cherished independence. So who is this person nominated to lead the Fed through all this? His name is Kevin Warsh, and people are calling him a hawkish dove, which I know sounds like a total contradiction, but here's what it means. He wants to be tough on one hand by shrinking the Fed's enormous $6.6 trillion balance sheet, but he's also soft on the other hand because he's open to cutting interest rates to really juice the economy. And this comparison really shows you the night and day difference we're talking about here. The Powell Fed has always been about data-driven decisions and fierce independence. A Warsh Fed, though, that signals a pretty radical pivot. We're talking about rate cuts aimed at growth, an aggressive shrinking of that balance sheet, and two really game-changing ideas. First, this privatization of the balance sheet, which could mean selling off the Fed's assets to private investors. And second, a new Treasury Fed Accord, which could basically gut the Fed's independence, giving the Treasury Department way more say. It's a complete rewrite of the rules. Okay, so let's move to the second element of our perfect storm, because this is where things get even more complicated. The economic fog. Right as this political fight is reaching its peak, the Fed is being forced to make huge decisions, while basically flying blind. And that poses a really crucial question for the entire economy, right? How in the world is the central bank supposed to steer this multi-trillion-dollar system when its main navigation tools, the economic data, are either missing or just completely unreliable? So where did this fog come from? Well, it all started with that historic 41-day government shutdown late last year. During that time, the Bureau of Labor Statistics had to just stop collecting data. And the direct result of that? The October 2025 inflation report, one of the most important economic numbers on the planet, was simply never produced. Gone. So how did they fill that massive gap? They used this emergency method called carry-forward imputation. Now, that sounds super technical, but it's actually shockingly simple. They just copied and pasted the price data from September. For huge parts of the economy, like housing, they literally just assumed there was zero inflation for an entire month. The crucial point here is that this wasn't a real solution. It was a Band-Aid. And now, economists are telling everyone to brace for an April surprise. That's the month when the data collection is supposed to fully catch up and correct for that missing month. And the fear is it could suddenly reveal a spike in inflation that's been hiding under the surface for months. And, just to add another layer of uncertainty to the pile, there's a new storm cloud forming as we speak. While most of the government is funded, the Department of Homeland Security's budget runs out on February 13th. A shutdown there would mess with everything from airport security to disaster relief, just injecting yet another dose of fear and risk into the markets. So what happens when this political hurricane smashes into the economic fog? You get a massive market wave. And right now, that wave is a historic, record-breaking rally in gold. I mean, just look at this. The biggest names on Wall Street have a serious case of gold fever. J.P.Morgan is leading the pack with that $6,300 target, but you've got UBS right behind them at $6,200. The consensus here is crystal clear. The giant institutions that move markets all believe this rally has a long, long way to go. But listen, this is not just Wall Street traders. This is a coordinated global state-level move. We're talking about central banks, the financial bedrock of entire countries, aggressively buying up physical gold. Look at Poland, Kazakhstan, Brazil, and especially China. They've been buying for 14 months straight. So what's the rush? Well, it's a strategic move to de-dollarize their reserves. They're trying to reduce their dependence on the US dollar, looking for an insurance policy against the exact kind of political instability we're talking about. Now, for years, we've all heard the narrative that Bitcoin is digital gold, right? That it's the modern safe haven. Well, this recent Warsh Shock put that theory to the ultimate test, and the result is pretty stunning. While gold soared 11%, Bitcoin actually fell 7%. It moved in lockstep with risky tech stocks, not with gold. In a real crisis, the digital gold narrative just crumbled. Okay, so we've looked at the political hurricane, the economic fog, and the market wave. But what does all of this complex, high-level stuff actually mean for you? Let's bring it all home and talk about how you might navigate the aftermath with your own finances. Here's a quick guide. First, for borrowers, the future of interest rates is now totally up in the air. A Warsh-led Fed might cut rates, sure, but all this instability is making mortgage markets really nervous. Now for savers, the US dollar is under a lot of pressure, which means hard assets are outperforming plain old cash. And remember that data blackout? It means your actual cost of living might be a lot higher than the official numbers are telling you. And finally, for investors, that old, reliable 60-40 stock and bond portfolio is being seriously questioned right now. Some big institutional models are now suggesting you need an allocation of up to 4.6% in gold just to weather this kind of storm. So we'll end with this question. With so many of the old rules of economics and investing getting thrown out the window, has the game fundamentally changed? In this new chaotic environment, is the best defense for your money no longer just playing it safe, but maybe playing a good offense in gold?